My sister threw a housewarming on the DY of my daughter's funeral, calling her death a minor event. I had to cut ties to protect myself. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Here, I share real-life stories inspired by topics discussed on Reddit, covering everything from family struggles to friendship challenges and life lessons. Today's story is about Veronica, a mother who faced unimaginable loss when her daughter Mia passed away. But it wasn't just the grief of losing her child, it was the betrayal from her own sister, Sarah, who showed no empathy for her pain. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you loved? Watch until the end to see how Veronica finds the strength to break free from her family's toxic hold and reclaim her peace. Your support means a lot to me, so please help me reach 1,000 subscribers to keep bringing you more incredible stories. My name is Veronica Carter, and I never thought I'd be telling this story. Life has a funny way of forcing us into situations we never saw coming, and sometimes, sharing the pain is the only way to make sense of it all. At 34, I've been through more than I ever imagined possible: joy, loss, betrayal, and every emotional roller coaster in between. And what's more, I'm left wondering how everything crumbled so suddenly. Let me start from the beginning. A year ago, I finalized my divorce from Ryan. Despite what you might think, it wasn't a nasty split. We both agreed that it was for the best. Ryan's a good man, wealthy, successful, and the divorce settlement was more than generous. He gave me the house we had shared, the one with the big backyard where our daughter, Mia, used to run around, and he set me up with a small apartment in the city that provides steady rental income. Mia was only 7 when Ryan and I split. She didn't fully understand, of course. She'd ask me almost every day, "Mom, when is Daddy coming to see me?" with her big green eyes full of hope. I could never bring myself to tell her the truth, but I was thankful for Ryan's consistency. Despite the divorce, he still made time for Mia every Saturday. He'd show up with coffee, the same smile he always had, and we'd chat like friends. "You're doing great, Veronica," he would say, patting me on the back after he dropped Mia off. "It's tough, but I see how you're handling it better than most." I never told him this, but that little affirmation kept me going. But then things started to change. The cracks in the foundation that I thought I had patched up began to widen. My younger sister, Sarah, seemed to get more and more distant as the months passed. Sarah and I had never been very close, but we had always shared a bond that I thought would survive anything. Boy, was I wrong. Sarah always seemed like the one who had it all together. She had a successful career, a beautiful house in the suburbs, and a perfect, picture-perfect life. Meanwhile, I was trying to piece together the shattered remnants of my family, doing my best to balance work, parenting, and a newly acquired home that I didn't know how to manage. Despite her apparent success, something about her behavior started to irk me. It was subtle at first, the way she made little snide remarks about my life choices or how she would often cancel family gatherings at the last minute. "Why don't you and Sarah hang out like you used to?" Mia asked me one evening, picking at her dinner plate. "You're sisters, right?" I paused for a moment, trying to find the right words. "Sometimes, sisters are just different, honey. That's all," I replied, hiding the truth behind a smile. What I didn't tell Mia was that Sarah wasn't just distant. She was bitter. Bitter about my divorce. Bitter about my life, and especially bitter about my seemingly lucky position in life. And if only I had known then how badly it would all unravel. It all started with Grandma's death. My grandmother, who was the heart and soul of our family, had always been the glue that held everything together. She was the one who would call just to check on me. The one who sent Mia homemade cookies when she was feeling down, the one who taught me how to bake pies and listen to old country music when life got tough. Grandma was more than just a family member to me. She was my anchor. She kept me grounded in a world that constantly shifted beneath my feet. When she passed away, I felt like the world had stopped spinning. The constant rhythm of our family life seemed to come to an abrupt halt. It felt like the end of an era, one that I had known and cherished deeply. The house she had lived in for over 50 years. The one with the flower boxes overflowing with geraniums and a front porch that creaked with memories, was no longer filled with her laughter or her soft voice calling my name. It was empty now, just a shell of the vibrant home that had once been the center of our family. Her funeral was small, as she would have wanted, quiet, dignified, and attended by only family. The kind of funeral that perfectly reflected her life, simple, understated, yet full of grace. I stood there, staring at her gravestone, a tight knot in my chest, fighting back the tears that seemed endless. Mia, standing next to me, held my hand tightly as if sensing the weight of the moment. I couldn't help but feel that a part of me had been buried with her that day. But what I didn't expect, what I could never have prepared for, was what Grandma had left behind. When my father, Mark, called me into his office the day after the funeral, I had no idea what was coming. He sat there, his usually calm face creased with emotion, holding a letter in his hand, the last will and testament of my grandmother. His voice was unsteady as he spoke. "She always had a soft spot for you, Veronica," he said, his eyes red-rimmed from grief. He wiped a tear from his cheek before continuing. "She thought the world of you, especially after you had Mia. She loved seeing you visit her every week, how you'd come by for Sunday dinners. How she adored Mia." I didn't know what to say. Grandma had always been supportive, even when my own family was falling apart. Her unwavering love for Mia and me had been a steady source of comfort, and I had never truly realized how much she had invested in our relationship until now. As I stared at the will, trying to make sense of the words, my mind reeled. This was all too much for me to process right now, especially not after the emotional toll of the funeral and everything that had come before it. Grandma had left me the house, the old farmhouse with the ivy-clad stone walls that had stood as the cornerstone of our family history for generations. And not just the house, but the land that surrounded it, acres of rolling hills and fields that had once been filled with the sounds of our ancestors working the land, building their lives from the ground up. The land that had been passed down from great-grandparents, a legacy that now lay in my hands. On top of that, there was a sizable sum of savings. Money I didn't need, but money that carried with it a weight I couldn't quite comprehend. Grandma had always lived modestly, never indulging in luxuries. Yet here she was, leaving me an inheritance that could change the course of my life. But as much as I was grateful, I also felt overwhelmed. The responsibility of this inheritance, combined with the grief of losing Grandma, was like a heavy stone lodged in my chest. I didn't want this, I just wanted her back. The phone rang just then, cutting through my thoughts. It was the doctor, Mia's doctor. My heart stopped for a moment and I felt my pulse quicken. I knew something was wrong. "Miss Carter." Dr. Davis's voice was soft, but there was an urgency behind it that sent a chill down my spine. "Mia's condition has worsened. We need to see you immediately. We may need to adjust her treatment plan." I felt the blood drain from my face as I listened to the words, the reality of Mia's illness hitting me like a tidal wave. My daughter, my precious Mia, was struggling, fighting for her life, and I had to be strong for her. But how could I be strong when everything was crumbling around me? When the very ground beneath my feet felt like it was slipping away, I stood up numb. "I'll be there right away," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. The will, the house, the land, everything faded into the background as I rushed to the hospital, my mind consumed by the thought of my daughter who needed me more than ever. But when I returned home later that night, a new storm was waiting for me. Sarah had arrived, as she often did when there was news, especially when that news involved something of value. She was sitting at my kitchen table, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Her sleek hair framed her face, her eyes glinting with an unreadable intensity. "I know you have more than enough already, Veronica," she said, her voice smooth but insistent, as if she had already decided what was about to happen. "Why don't you just give me the house? It would mean so much to me. You don't really need it, do you?" I stared at her, the words hanging in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. I could feel my blood boiling, my fists clenched at my sides. Sarah, my sister, the one person I thought I could trust, was asking me to hand over our family legacy like it was nothing. This house wasn't just property. It was a symbol of our family's history, our struggles, our triumphs. It was where I had spent countless summers, where my memories were intertwined with the smell of my grandmother's kitchen, the warmth of the hearth, and the love that had built this home. How could Sarah sit there and act like it was just a piece of real estate? But there she was, cool and collected, making demands as if this was her right. And it infuriated me. How could she not understand what this meant to me? I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. The words caught in my throat, too raw to speak. And then, before I could even form a coherent thought, my phone rang again. It was Dr. Davis. My heart sank. "Ms. Carter," he said again, his voice softer now. "We need you here now. Mia's condition has deteriorated significantly. It's serious. In that moment, everything else, the inheritance, the house, Sarah's demands, faded away. My world was no longer defined by money or property. It was defined by Mia, and by the terrifying unknown that lay ahead. "I'll be there," I said, my voice steady now. Even though my heart was breaking, I had to go. I had to be with Mia. But as I grabbed my coat and rushed out the door, I knew something had changed. The weight of the house, the responsibility of this inheritance, now felt heavier than ever. When I returned home later that night, it wasn't just the house I was fighting for anymore. It was my family, my future, and everything that mattered to me. But Sarah's cold demand, her casual dismissal of everything that mattered in our past, was a stark reminder that nothing was as simple as it seemed. The next few weeks were a blur of doctor appointments, endless nights in the hospital, and constant battles with insurance companies. Mia had been sick for months, but no one had been able to give us clear answers. It wasn't until that phone call from Dr. Williams that I truly understood how dire the situation was. I had never imagined it could be this bad. Not in my wildest nightmares. My stomach sank when I heard the words. "Mia has leukemia, Veronica," Dr. Williams said, her voice detached and clinical, as though she were explaining the weather. "It's acute lymphoblastic leukemia. We need to start treatment immediately." Those words hit me like a freight train. I could barely breathe. The room spun, and I found myself gripping the phone like it was the only thing holding me together. Leukemia. My little girl, my world, was sick with a disease I had only heard of in passing but never thought I would face head-on. I couldn't think straight. I didn't know what to do, what to say. I was frozen in place, hearing the doctor's voice continue, but the words became a blur. "Veronica, you need to bring Mia in right away," Dr. Williams added, her urgency finally cutting through my fog. "This is time-sensitive. We'll do everything we can." I didn't even respond. I just hung up and sat there, alone in the room. The weight of the diagnosis crushed me. Mia had always been strong, such a bright and energetic little girl, and now she was fighting for her life. My mind raced, trying to figure out how to balance everything. The treatment, the hospital visits, the constant worry. But how was I supposed to keep it together when my world felt like it was falling apart? I had always tried to maintain some semblance of control over my life. But this was different. Mia's health was slipping away, and nothing in my life seemed to matter except getting her better. I tried to focus on the doctors, the treatments, the promises of hope. But the overwhelming fear and anxiety lingered in every corner of my mind. And through all of this, Sarah just kept pushing. She had heard about the diagnosis, of course. It was impossible to hide it in a family like ours where every piece of news, good or bad, spread like wildfire. But while I was in the hospital fighting to stay strong for Mia, Sarah's focus was not on her niece or on supporting me through this nightmare. No, Sarah's focus was solely on herself. On the house. The one thing she had been eyeing since Grandma passed. I tried to ignore the constant phone calls and messages from her, asking about the house, about the paperwork, about whether she could move in once Mia was settled. I had tried to give her the benefit of the doubt at first, thinking maybe she was concerned about the practical aspects of things. After all, she was my sister and we were family. But Sarah didn't care about what Mia was going through. I could see it in her eyes whenever I spoke to her. She had this cold, calculating look that made me uneasy. She wasn't concerned about my daughter's health, about the treatment, or how we were going to cope with the bills. She was fixated on one thing, the house. "I know you have more than enough already, Veronica," she said one evening, her tone smooth but laced with an unmistakable demand. "Why don't you just give me the house? You don't really need it, do you? You're already living in that other place. You have enough." I stared at her, feeling my blood boil. Her words cut through the air like a knife. I had spent my childhood in that house, watching my grandmother take care of every detail, pouring love into every room, filling the space with memories of warmth and family. It wasn't just some piece of property, it was home. My home. And now Sarah wanted me to hand it over to her like it was a commodity. It was as if she could see the weakness in me, as if my vulnerability, my exhaustion from caring for Mia, made me an easy target. She wasn't offering support or asking if I needed help. She was taking advantage of the situation. I could feel the anger rise in me, but I had to swallow it. Mia needed me. I couldn't let Sarah's greed become my priority. But the worst part was, as much as I wanted to push back, to tell Sarah exactly what I thought of her actions, I was so overwhelmed by everything happening with Mia that I didn't have the energy to fight back the way I should have. She knew it too. She knew that I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and had no choice but to deal with her demands. So, I did something I never thought I would do. I handed her the keys to Grandma's house. It wasn't even a decision I consciously made. It was more like an impulse, a reflex. I was so overwhelmed by everything that I thought if I just gave her what she wanted, it might give me some space, some peace. If I signed over the papers, maybe she would stop pestering me. Maybe I could just focus on Mia and the treatment and forget about the house, about Sarah's selfishness. I told myself I would handle it later. Once Mia's health was stable, once the doctors gave us a better prognosis. I'll take care of the rest once everything settles, I told her, my voice weak as I handed over the papers. She smiled at me, but it wasn't a smile of relief or kindness. It was a smile of triumph. She knew she had one. I'm going to throw a huge housewarming party, she said, practically giddy with excitement as I handed her the keys. I'll make sure to invite everyone. Even Mia, if she's feeling up to it. My blood ran cold at her words. Even Mia? Was she serious? I didn't even process the full meaning of her statement at that moment. My mind was elsewhere. It was with Mia, with the doctors, with the endless worry that I couldn't shake. I was numb, caught up in the whirlwind of medical appointments and constant questions about Mia's treatment, and Sarah's selfishness seemed like just another thing I had to put on the back burner. I wasn't in a place to stand up to her, to tell her that this was wrong. I thought that giving her what she wanted would bring me some peace. But as I left her with the keys, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I had just made a terrible mistake. Later that night, as I sat by Mia's hospital bed, the exhaustion of the day sinking into my bones, I thought about what Sarah had said. I tried to push the thought out of my head. There was no room for it now, not with Mia in the condition she was in. But no matter how hard I tried, the image of Sarah, with her cold smile, demanding the house, kept coming back to me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something. Sarah had crossed a line. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about respect. It was about loyalty. And in that moment, I understood that the betrayal I felt wasn't just about her greed. It was about how she had used my vulnerability, my exhaustion, against me. And that was something I wasn't sure I could forgive. Knock, knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story. But before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. A week later, Mia passed away. And that's when the world truly crumbled. I had been dreading this moment ever since the first signs of Mia's illness. But nothing could have prepared me for the finality of it. Watching her slip away, piece by piece, was like witnessing a part of me die. I held her hand in mine, feeling the last warmth leave her small body, and I knew it was over. The hospital room, once full of sterile smells and the constant beeping of machines, now felt emptier than ever. I remember how still it was, almost suffocating. The nurses had done their best. The doctors had tried every treatment they could think of, but nothing could stop the inevitable. Mia, my sweet, brave little girl, was gone. I spent the next few days in a haze, trapped between the unbearable weight of grief and the overwhelming logistics of her funeral. The pain was so deep, so raw, that I couldn't even find the strength to breathe properly. I'd lost everything. My daughter, my hope, and what was left was a hollow shell of a person simply moving through the motions. We set the funeral for Saturday, the same day Sarah's housewarming party was scheduled. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed that Sarah, being family, would cancel or at least postpone her celebration out of respect. But then I remembered who she was, and I knew that it wasn't going to be that simple. I couldn't keep the bitterness from seeping into my words when I called her. Her voice on the other end was upbeat, a sharp contrast to the silence that surrounded me. "Sarah," I said, my voice trembling, barely holding it together. "You can't be serious. My daughter is dead, and you're throwing a party." There was a pause. And then she responded as though it were just a minor inconvenience in her perfectly organized life. "Well, I've been planning it for months," she said, her voice smooth, almost too calm. "It's just a funeral, Veronica. Mia's gone. Life goes on, right?" Her words hit me like a slap across the face. I felt the sting, a sharp pain deep in my chest, but I didn't know if it was from the shock of her coldness or from the depth of my grief. How could she be so callous? How could she speak of Mia's death like it was nothing more than a blip in her life, an interruption in her plans? I wanted to scream, to tell her how wrong she was, but instead I stood there, frozen. The anger bubbled up in me, but I couldn't give it a voice. Not yet. My head was spinning, my heart shattering into 1,000 pieces, and all I could do was stand there, holding the phone as her words echoed in my mind. Sarah, this is my child we're talking about. I finally managed to say, my voice barely more than a whisper. I don't care how long you've been planning this party. You can't be serious. You can't. Veronica, she interrupted, her tone shifting slightly but still casual. It's just a party. It's not like Mia's going to care. She's gone. We all have to keep moving forward, right? And I've got guests coming from out of town. The food's been ordered. You can't expect me to change everything for a funeral. It's just one day. The words hung in the air like a cloud of poison, seeping into every crack in my heart. I couldn't process what she was saying. How was it possible for anyone to be this indifferent? How could she treat the death of my daughter like it was nothing but a fleeting inconvenience? But the reality settled in. She was my sister. She wasn't going to change, not for me, not for Mia. I could hear the click of her heels against the floor in the background as she moved around her house, no doubt preparing for the celebration that would unfold just hours after I would be burying my child. I hung up the phone without another word, the weight of what had just happened settling heavily on my chest. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to keep my balance in the face of all this, Mia gone, my family disintegrating, my own heart breaking with every step I took. As the days passed, the silence between Sarah and I grew louder. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the way she dismissed my pain. How easily she could just move on with her life, while I was drowning in mine. She hadn't even asked if I needed help with the funeral arrangements, or if Mia had a favorite flower she'd want at her service, or if I needed someone to talk to. It wasn't just that she was selfish, it was that she was completely unaware, or worse, completely indifferent to the reality of what I was going through. I felt alone in my grief. The funeral preparations consumed me, but I couldn't stop my mind from returning to that conversation, to her cold indifference. How could someone who was supposed to be family, someone who should have understood, be so completely distant, so self-absorbed? The day of the funeral arrived, and I felt numb. The church was filled with people who had loved Mia, people who had cared for her, people who cried with me, mourned with me. But even surrounded by the support of family and friends, the weight of Sarah's actions loomed over me. She hadn't even bothered to show up. I knew she had her party to host, and in some twisted way, I almost respected her for sticking to her plan. She wasn't even pretending to care. The service was beautiful. Mia would have loved the soft music and the delicate flowers that lined the pews. It wasn't perfect, but it was fitting for my daughter. I stood there, barely able to hold myself together as I looked at the small casket and thought about the future that would never be. The future where Mia would never grow up, never laugh again, never run to me with open arms. The world felt cold and empty, as if something fundamental had been ripped from it. Later that evening, when I returned home, I found a message from Sarah on my phone. I'm sorry for your loss, but I need to get on with my life. I hope you understand. I didn't understand. I didn't know how anyone could be this cruel, this oblivious to the pain someone else was feeling. It was clear to me now. Sarah wasn't just insensitive. She was indifferent. She had never understood me. And she certainly didn't understand what it meant to lose a child. In the days that followed, I tried to carry on, but the pain was unbearable. The thought of Sarah's celebration haunted me. How could I ever look at her the same way again? How could I forgive her for this? My grief was overwhelming, but my anger, my resentment towards Sarah was becoming just as consuming. How could I ever go back to the way things were before? How could I ever allow someone who so callously ignored my suffering to be a part of my life again? That's when I decided I had had enough. The weight of everything that had happened, the grief over Mia, the betrayal from Sarah, the toxic family dynamics. I could no longer carry it. It was like a switch had flipped inside me. The years of tolerating disrespect, the endless compromises, the painful silence I had endured for far too long suddenly felt like too much. I was suffocating under the weight of it all. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I finally made the decision to put myself first. I cut ties with Sarah and the rest of my family. It wasn't easy. In fact, it felt like I was tearing a part of myself out of my chest. They were supposed to be my support system, my family, the ones who had my back when things got tough. But instead, they were the ones who had broken me. Sarah's selfishness, her inability to even acknowledge the pain I was going through, had shattered any illusion I had left about family loyalty. My parents, though they had tried to play the role of the peacemakers, had let me down too. They had chosen to side with Sarah, excusing her behavior even as she trampled over my grief and my rights. I took back control of Grandma's house, the one thing that had always felt like home to me, the one piece of my past that was still mine. I had allowed Sarah to manipulate me for too long, to turn something so precious into a transaction. But I was done. I made sure she and my parents had no claim to it. I didn't need their permission. It was mine. It had always been mine. I was done apologizing, done second-guessing myself, done trying to please people who didn't care about me or what I had gone through. And then came the moment of reckoning. I watched as Sarah's housewarming party, which she had gone to such great lengths to plan and organize, turned into a complete disaster. It was almost surreal. One minute, the sound of laughter and music filled the air, and the next, it was shattered by the sound of police sirens. It was like a scene out of a movie, too ridiculous to be real. I had called the police. Of course, I had made sure the paperwork was in order, the legal documents, the proof that the house was rightfully mine. Sarah had no right to hold her party in that house. And when the police arrived, she was furious. Her guests were confused, some of them even arguing with the officers, but there was no way around it. The house wasn't hers, and neither was the party she was throwing in it. I stood in the background watching as the chaos unfolded before me. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was me taking back control of my life, of everything that had been stolen from me. I was no longer the passive bystander. I was no longer the one who cowered in the face of manipulation. "I'll never forget this, Veronica," Sarah screamed at me as she stood in the doorway, mascara running down her face, her hands shaking with anger. "You've always had everything, a rich husband, a healthy child, and now you've taken everything from me." Her words stung not because they were true, but because they were born out of pure jealousy and bitterness. She had spent so long comparing herself to me, resenting the life I had built, the things I had. She couldn't understand that I had never wanted any of it at the cost of my integrity or my family. And in the end, she had proven exactly who she was, a person willing to destroy others for her own gain. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The silence between us spoke volumes. The anger and the resentment that had built up inside me over the years began to melt away. For the first time, I felt light, free. The weight of my past, the constant manipulation, the guilt I had carried for so long, none of it mattered anymore. I had finally taken back what was mine. I had learned that sometimes you have to protect yourself from the ones who are supposed to love you the most. I walked away from the scene with a sense of finality. Sarah's voice echoed behind me, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to hear her anymore. I had already heard everything I needed to know. This was the end of our relationship, the end of the toxic bond we had once shared. It was hard to admit, but I knew it was the right choice. For me, for Mia, for my peace of mind. As I left the house, I couldn't help but think of the countless times I had allowed Sarah to walk all over me. How many times had I forgiven her, excused her behavior, thinking that somehow she would change? How many times had I bent over backward to keep the peace, to keep the family together, only to have it thrown back in my face? It was over now. No more. The next few days were filled with paperwork, phone calls, and more legal battles. But the weight on my shoulders felt lighter now. Every signature I put on a document, every email I sent to lawyers, was a step closer to closing this chapter of my life. I could feel the burden lifting piece by piece, until it was just a memory, a painful but necessary part of my past. And then there was the aftermath, the calls from my parents, the texts from friends who had heard about the scene at Sarah's party. Everyone had something to say, but I didn't care anymore. I was done explaining myself, done justifying my actions. One text stood out, though. It was from my best friend, Lisa. She had been with me through the darkest moments, always supporting me, always reminding me that I wasn't alone. "I'm so proud of you, Veronica. You're stronger than you know. You did the right thing. Don't let them bring you down anymore. Her words hit me hard. I had spent so long trying to make everyone else happy, trying to fix what was broken, trying to be the one who held everything together. But now, for the first time in a long while, I was doing something for myself. And it felt good. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be moments when I would question my decision. Moments when I would miss the family I had once hoped to rebuild. But I knew deep down that I had done the right thing. I had chosen my own peace, my own happiness. And that was something no one could take away from me. Conclusion. It took time, but I finally began to heal. I learned that family doesn't always mean blood. It's the people who stand by you, who support you when everything falls apart. And sometimes cutting ties with toxic people is the only way to move forward. Mia may be gone, but her memory lives on. And now I live for her. And for me. No more regrets. No more letting others dictate my life. What do you think about Veronica's journey? How would you have handled such betrayal from a family member? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Your feedback means the world to me. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss out on the next story that's just around the corner. Thank you so much for sticking with me till the end of this one. Your support keeps me going. Let's keep this conversation going.